Alrighty, hello English A language and literature students. This is Mr. Brown speaking to you. Those of you who don't know me, I am a language and literature teacher from Southeast Asia. I teach in a big international school and I've got quite a bit of experience teaching language and literature. And for those of you who do know me, it's good to see you again. Well, I'm not seeing you, obviously, you're seeing me, but coming to you again to try and give you one more last minute hack to help you through this week, because if my calculations are correct, this is the final week before you sit that May exam. And this one's for paper 2, as the title suggests. Just some tips that will hopefully get you through to the last week and feeling good. If you've been following along with the last couple of clips I put on, you've been doing the work, you've been preparing, you've revised the text we've studied, you have also been looking at how to get yourself into a good state, and hopefully you've been doing some practice. And maybe you've got to this point and you are thinking, what exactly do I do in the final week? Because I've done everything and probably I'm not going to be able to guess exactly what the question is. Well, today's little hack is there to help you if you've done the work. And if you haven't done the work, well, it's probably going to help you as well, give you some general practice that you can use to help you get through this final week. This hack is something that I worked out a while ago. I call it preparing the general question. I found when I was at university, when I was studying myself, I would spend ages trying to work out what exactly the question was going to be in the exams, and I could never work out exactly what the question was going to be. But I generally knew what they were looking for when they posed these kinds of questions. And by coming up with a general question, which would allow me to practice and would allow me to cover a lot of ground as I practiced, I was able to do general practice, which really helped me get into a good rhythm, helped me to go over the content, and helped me to work through what's likely going to come up in the exam. And by practicing the general question, then hopefully by going through a few of these general questions, you're going to get to the point where you will have done something that on the day is going to help you. You might not have done a full practice essay that is exactly the question that's going to come up, but you would have done some body paragraphs or an introduction that you can pretty well use for the actual thing. So this is my hack for the final week, getting ready. You've probably already practiced a few essays. I hope those of you who are really trying to do a good job would have done some practice. But for this final week, this will hopefully be a little hack that can help you through. So what I mean by preparing the general question, obviously you've thought about it already. What's going to come up for paper 2? As the title suggests, that's our focus for today. What's going to come up? And we know that there are generally 4 types of questions. You've got the stylistic question, you've got the writer's or the literary value kind of question, or the writer's contextual background question. You've got the conflict question, and you've got thematic question. These are generally 4 types of questions that will come up. And if we look at them as general ideas and we look at what is the general question they get asked for, then we come up with a question that we can practice and we can use as practice for the whole week, that we can jump into, and over the week we can practice different material in answering the question, and we can jump into it a few times and get into a rhythm of answering these type of questions over and over and over. So hopefully when you get to the big day, you walk in there, you look, you decide which one you're going to do, and you've had enough practice all week so that if you're doing a stylistic question, you can jump straight into the rhythm and you can write something that's really good. That's the idea. So I've come up with 4 very general questions that if it was me, I would be practicing all week. I wouldn't probably not be practicing all of them. I'd probably say my number one go-to is probably going to be thematic question, would be probably my bent. That would be the way I would go for it. And maybe I would do as a second one stylistic type questions. Each to their own. It depends on what your superpower is. By now, you should probably know what your superpower is. So if we follow along, and hopefully I can get this to work the way I like to. So if we prepare some general questions, so if I'm looking at that number one, the stylistic question, and you've probably already had a read of it, in what ways do two authors you have studied employ stylistic choices to create a powerful impact on the reader? And that's basically what that first question is generally asking you for. It may not be exactly the first question, but that stylistic type question is asking you for how has the author used a stylistic device to really impact you as the reader. And so it could be, as it's come in the past, how do they use narrative voice to impact you? How does characterization really have an impact on you? How does symbolism really impact you? So you don't know exactly which one's going to come up. Maybe you can look at the last few years and maybe try to use, powers of deduction to work out what it's not going to be. But if I'm practicing a question like this, then I can do it all week. And one day I can start and maybe I'm looking at The Great Gatsby and Chronicle of a Death Foretold. And the first time I look at it, I think, so what stylistic choice does the author really use that has a really powerful impact? Well, the first thing that jumps out from those two is obviously a narrative point of view. So I might jump into that and write a really great body paragraph on narrative point of view and go, okay, if that comes up, I'm pretty well ready and I've got some ideas where I might go after that. And I've got at least one body paragraph that I've practiced, or maybe I've done an introduction and a body paragraph and I'm feeling pretty good for that. Or the next time I jump into it and practice, I might go, okay, so we started with the narrative choice or narrative voice. Next time we're going to look at symbolism. How does symbolism really work? And I can write a great body paragraph for that. So it's not trying to pick the one thing that's going to come up, but by practicing the general question, I can write a great essay that goes through a few different things. So something in there will hopefully work. And if I practice it over the week, I can jump into this question and one day do character, one day do setting, one day do narrative point of view. And over the week, I'll probably have got something that could end up being in the exam. So hopefully you get the idea and we can go through the next few pretty quickly. Number two is an interesting one. The kind of context and literary value question is not one that my guys have been doing a lot, and it's not one that I've really focused on in my teaching. But if I was looking at a general question for that type, it would be how do the context in which two authors wrote influence the production and reception of their works, and how might interpretations of these works change over time? That's a pretty general question of the kind of thing that will come up. So over the week, if I want to practice that, I might start off writing an introduction, talking about, if I'm focusing on my two works, Great Gatsby, looking at the Roaring Twenties and how life was at that time and how his audience might have really looked at what was going on in their world and the ideas of the American dream and how that's changed over time. And then Chronicle of a Death Foretold, we're looking at traditional Colombian society of possibly the 1950s and how that has changed over time. And then I might look at what's the first body paragraph idea that comes up for me, and these worlds that are constructed around ideas based on religion, being very conservative and based on religion, really looking at conservative Christianity in Chronicle of a Death Foretold, and then really looking at a kind of more of a modern take on Christianity in The Great Gatsby, and looking at how they reflect the author's ideas for the time and how they may change over time. And then the next time I might look at ideas of social norms and gender stereotypes within that culture and going over time. So you get the idea. I can play with a whole bunch of different ideas. I can come back to it, and over the week I can practice probably the whole gamut of ideas that could come up, and we're ready to go. So another general question is number three, the conflict question. How do two authors you have studied explore the significance of different forms of conflict within their works? So instead of just looking at one and hopefully I pick the right conflict, I look at conflict in general. And maybe one time I sit down and I write about conflict in terms of intergenerational conflict, the old world versus the new world. Next time I write about gender conflict, men versus women, or looking at patriarchy and challenges to patriarchy. Or another time I'll look at it and I'll say rich versus poor, and on and on and on. And over the week, I could probably practice, the whole area of conflict in the two novels that I'm really looking at, or if you're looking at more than two. So that way, over the week, I can cover the whole thing and I'll be ready. And the last one is the thematic question. To what extent do two authors you have studied explore similar themes, and how do their approaches compare? So again, it's not trying to nail the exact theme, but if I'm thinking thematic questions is my strong suit, then I can go through one after the other the themes that come up in these texts. I can practice writing body paragraphs about them, and then by the end of the week, who knows, I've covered at least one body paragraph for whatever comes up. Yep, so we're not going to go into too much more than that. I think you get the idea. I just want to finish by saying good luck. Maybe coming back again for another clip if we have time. But for now, that's a good hack that you can try and use this week. Put in the work, and your future self will thank you for doing the good work. So put it in now, and I'm going to tune out. But good luck, everyone.